Hi everyone, welcome back to Crochet Rocks. My name's Tracy, and in this season of the Granny tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this purple patch striped granny. The one I'm going to show you how to do will be slightly different from this. I'm going to insert another row because I feel like it just isn't square enough. I know once I've blocked it, if I block it, it will be squarer, but I don't like too many large holes, so I don't want to pull it out of shape. So I'm going to insert another row, so that will be the only difference. Now with this one, it's a good stash buster, and you can do whichever colour scheme you want. Now I've chosen this one, but you can do it so that it's more of a graduated colour change, so it has an ombre effect, or you can just do a stripe of two colours. You can do whatever you want really, basically, and if you can incorporate this square in with other squares in a project such as a blanket, and it will break up the different types of square that you've got. So you can use this one around a traditional granny or a flower granny or something like that, just to sort of break it up. So I'm going to show you how to do this, and for that you'll see that I have, let's move my drink, that I have put it over there, just scraps of yarn. They're not new balls, and this one is just a small one, but they are all Cygnet yarn, and they're all Cygnet DK, which is a 3-weight in the US. And I have seen that you can get Cygnet yarn in the US. I've seen people do not tutorials, but yarn hauls. That's what I'm trying to think of. So it's machine washable. They're usually 298 meters and 100% acrylic. They're not the absolute softest yarn, but they have got a lot better, I feel. But all of these are Cygnet, and I've got quite a lot of, just in case I run out of that one, I do have more of it. So good stash buster, as I said. So with this particular one, I've kind of graduated my colours to the centre and then repeated them in the opposite way. But as I say, you can do whichever you want. Now the only drawback to this granny square is the amount of ends that you have to sew in, because every time you change colour you've got 2 more ends to sew in. Now I've done this one, so it's not so annoying to look at, but they can be quite endy. But if you wanted, you could do 3 rows of each colour. You can do with this, once you've got the hang of it, any combination that you want. So I'm going to start with my darkest purple, and that's why I've called this purple patch. But you'll also need, I almost forgot to tell you, a 4mm crochet hook, as it's a 3-weight. If it's quite a thick one, then you can go up to 4.5 or even a 5mm. But I've got a pair of scissors and a darning needle as well. And believe me, you will need the darning needle. So I'm going to pull out some yarn and show you how we get started. So I'm going to aim this towards a beginner, but it won't be the slowest. I'll show you each stitch carefully at first, and then I'll speed up. So you want a nice long tail, because when you're sewing in squares for a granny, when you're sewing in your ends, unless it's this end row where you do have another row of tighter stitches, there's not anywhere to kind of sew it in. You're just kind of going in and out of these little clusters to try and hide your tails. So you do want a nice long tail to sew in. Now you just need to make a slip knot, and you can do that however you want, but that's how I do it. But when I was taught when I was young, it was to make a loop, go around the back of it and just pull it through, and then you can just make that loop smaller. I'll show you again. Make a loop, go around the back of it and pull it through, and you make a nice slip knot. So that's how, when I was a beginner, I was doing my slip knots. So you need to make, for this particular square, a chain of 32. Now to do a chain, we yarn over and we pull it through the loop on our hook. Yarn over and pull it through the loop. And that's as simple as it gets to make a chain. Yarn over and pull it through. So that's 4, and I need a total of 32. So I'm going to pause the video and I will catch up with you again when I have 32 chains. So I have my 32, and as I forgot to mention it earlier, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and you'll be informed when there are new videos. And there's lots of granny square videos coming out at the moment because it's the season of the granny, but I do have lots of other tutorials, lots of other content and giveaways going on. So that being said, the foundation row, we're going to do what we call in the UK terms a double crochet, but in the US terms that's a single crochet. So I'm going to do this in UK terms, but I will mention the US terms beforehand. So this loop on the hook doesn't count. This is our first chain from the hook, and we're going to go into the second one, and we're going to try and go in to the 2 loops. As you can see, you can just go in and you will see there's, I don't know if you can actually see it, but there are 2 loops on that there that I've gone through. It's very dark, isn't it? Dark yarn. I'll zoom in. So I've gone in and you can see the gold between it. So I've gone through the 2 loops and I'm yarning over and pulling up a loop. So I've got 2 on my hook, yarn over and pull through both of those. And that in the UK is a double crochet, and in the US it's a single. So I'm going to do that in every stitch along. We're going to go into the next one, taking care to go through those 2, yarn over and pull up a loop, 2 on the hook, yarn over, pull through both. And I'm going to do that in each stitch all the way along. So that will give me a total of 31 stitches at the end of my row. So I'll show you once more, and then I will pause the video and catch up with you at the end. We go into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through both. So I'm going to pause the video now, and I will see you when I get to the end of this row. So I'm almost at the very end. I'm going to do my last stitch. So now you'll have a row complete of double crochet. Remember, that's a single in the US. So now our first proper row, we're going to chain 2, and that will count as a treble crochet in the UK terms. And a treble crochet in the UK is a double crochet in the US. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start our rows of our clusters. Now in the same stitch, I'm going to zoom in again so you can see this. I can get hold of my zoom, that is. There we are. We're going to go in to exactly the same stitch that this has come out of. You can see there, it's very dark yarn, I know, and it's not that easy to see, but we're going to go in that same stitch and we're going to do a treble. So how we do that is we yarn over, we go into the same stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. So now we have 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So we'll have 2 at the start. Now we're going to skip 2 stitches and we're going to go into the 3rd one. So if can you see that? We're going to skip that one and that one. We're going to go into this one where my thumb is. So we're going to do 3 treble crochet in there. Remember, that's a US double. And we're going to do that exactly the same as before, yarning over, into the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over through 2, yarn over through 2. And we're going to do 3 in that stitch. No chains in between. Excuse me. We're going to skip 2 stitches just as before, and we're going to go into the 3rd one and we're going to do 3 in there. And we're going to repeat that all the way along to the end, skipping 2 and doing a cluster of 3 in the next stitch. And then when we get to the end, we're going to finish off with 2 exactly the same way as we started this row. So we're going to skip 2 and go into this one, do our 3, and then skip 2 and 3 in this one. So I'm going to pause the video now and I will catch up with you when we get to the end, and I'll show you exactly what we do at the end. Okay, so I've made it all the way to the end, and I just wanted to show you how it looks. We should have 9 clusters on this row, and then this is how it's going to go at the end. We're going to skip our 2 into our last stitch, and in that stitch we're just going to do 2, just as we did. I don't think I went in that properly. There we are. We're going to do 2, just as we did when we first started. So that's what it would look like. Even all the way across, 9 clusters. So we're not going to change our yarn on this particular row. We're going to chain 2 and turn our work. And this time we're going to have 10 clusters, because we're going to go in each gap. We're only going to have our turning chain. We're not going to go into the same one again, but we're going to do 3 in this first gap in between our clusters. So that will be our first cluster of 3. And then no chains at all. We're just going to go in each of those gaps and do a cluster of 3 all the way to the end. And there will be 10 clusters of 3 on this row. So that will alternate. You'll get 9 on this row and you'll get 10 on this row. So I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to want you to finish your last cluster in this very last hole, and I'll show you what we do at the end of the row. Okay, so I've gone all the way along and I've gone in between each cluster, so I have got 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So how we end off is by going into our last stitch, the 2 chain. We're going to go into the top one and do our treble crochet, but we're only going to complete half of it. So we're going to go pull through 2 and leave 2 loops on our hook. I'm going to set it down, cut off the yarn, and now we're going to change colour. Of course, you can do it all one solid colour if you want. If that's going to look good with your project, then that's fine. You just carry on in the same yarn all the way to the end. But I'm going to show you how we'll change the yarn. So we want to hold on to this tail end, just trap it in our fingers, if we ever can get hold of it, that is. And with this one, so we hold them together and we just complete the stitch using that yarn. Now, because I don't really want it to move, I'm just going to do a little knot. Don't pull it tight because it will distort the stitch. Just secure it like that. So now we have got a new colour. So we're going to chain 2 just as before, turn our work, and we're going, I always do my very first stitch over these tails just to make sure it's in place and doesn't come undone. So that's yarn over. We're going to go the first row, we're going to repeat that first row. So now we're going to do 2 at the end. So in the same stitch that this has come from, we're going to do 1 treble crochet. I've actually got a little bit of the purple yarn there come through, so let's move that out of the way. Did it again. How strange. Okay, so we yarn over, we go into the gap, pull through 2, pull through 2. So we've got our 2 at the end. Drop those out the way because they'll just confuse. And now we're going to go in every single gap again, all the way to the end, and this time we're mirroring that bottom row, so it will be here, and we're going to do our 3 in each gap. There'll be a total of 9 clusters again, and when we get to the end in our last stitch, just as here we've got 2, we will put 2 in the end, just repeating that very first row. So that's our repeat. Basically, we've got 2 rows, one where we'll have 9 clusters and one where we'll have 10 clusters. And on the 9 cluster row, our work will start with 2 stitches, so we've got the 2 turning chain and this stitch, and it will end with 2, and where we've got the 10 we just end off with 1 at each end. So that is the repeat, and every second row we're going to change colour until we get to the centre, and I'm going to do something slightly different. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to go all the way to this end and then I'm going to work my way back, and I will pick up with you again when I get to this part. Remember, we're doing 2 in our end stitch on this round, 1 on the next round, just as we repeat an exact repeat of these 2 rows. Okay, so I've made it 2 rows and I've finished on my 10 cluster. I worked over this yarn at this point just to get rid of it a little bit, but you don't have to do that. You can sew them all in. I will sew that one back through there anyway because I don't want it to unravelled. So with our last stitch we're going to do our 1 treble crochet, but we're going to only do half of it because we're going to change colour again. So we snip this yarn off, and this time we're going to do this colour. Pull out some yarn, and again exactly the same way as before, we finish that treble crochet with the new colour, turn it over and tie it gently, not tight. You don't want it too loose because the stitches will become a little baggy, but you don't want it tight because it will distort them. So there we are, off, and we're going to chain 2, start our next row, turn our work, and we're going to start all over again. So with this one, as it was the last couple of row, like 2 row cluster or 2 row repeats, we're going to do a treble crochet in the same stitch that we've done our chain. So I'll go over my tails just for 1 stitch, just pulls it away from the edge slightly, then I tuck them away, and in this one we're going to go into our first hole again with our 3, and we're going to repeat the last 2 rows exactly the same as before. So we're starting with our 9. I'll show you on this row because it's more bright. We're going to start, we've got the 9 clusters, then we're going to turn and come back with the 10, and when we get to this point we're going to change our yarn, and I'm going to meet up with you there and show you what we're going to do on that particular segment. Okay, so I've completed my 2 rows of this colour, and I've got this one at the ready, and because I'm going to do more rows I'm going to use the larger ball in case I don't have enough. Just pulling out some yarn, and again we hold on to this tail end and this tail end and complete our stitch with the new colour, turn over and a gentle knot just to secure it. And see what I mean, all these ends are starting to take over already, aren't they? So that's the only drawback to this. So 2 chain, turn our work, I'm going to grab those 2 and pull them a little tighter so that I can go over them, and just as before the start is 2, so I'm going to the same stitch and completing my second stitch there, and I'm going to go in each gap all the way along with my 3 in my cluster. So how this is going to differ, because I feel that this needs 1 more row, I have kind of stretched it a little bit to get it into a square, and I didn't like the idea of doing that. So in this particular row I'm going to do 3. Now I'm not quite sure how that's going to affect it at the end. it might look a little different, but I'm going to try. So if when it gets to the end we're not keen on it, this is the way to go, or another colour maybe. But I'm going to try and just do 3 and then carry on, and we'll see if that makes any difference to the square. But it's perfectly good square, and you could block it, but I just don't like the idea of pulling it so that it's long. I mean, you could make it shorter. You could make it one cluster down shorter, so you would just need, instead of doing 31 stitches, just 32 chain and 31 stitches, just adjust it. As long as it's an odd number, then you should be fine with that. So I'll put that one aside, and I'm going to carry on, and I'm going to do my 3 rows with this colour, and then that will then make our join over this side, and I will catch up with you once I've done that. Okay, so I'm all the way back, and this row ends with the 2. So I'm going to not complete it and change colour. The reason I thought of doing 3 in this centre one was because with all the other colours we get to use them twice, but the centre one we just use the once, so I figured being a little larger would even that out a little bit. So now I'm going to go back to this yarn, because we're going to use these colours in reverse order. Don't have to do it that way, you can do it whichever way you like, but just for the purposes of showing you, I'm going to keep it the same as that one. I think the reason that this one turned out slightly shorter this way was because the yarn I used normally for doing this is thicker, but this is a stash buster, and I just wanted to try and make it get rid of some of this ends of projects. So I'm going to carry on, change colour as we have done so far, and now I'm going to go back to the 2 rows, and of course now instead of our rows beginning with 2, they're now beginning with just 1. So I'm going to work over these tails in this way, so if it doesn't look right at the end I'll pull them out and sew them in. If it does look right, I'll just sew them in a little bit better. So there we are, make sure that's tight. Drop them now and carry on in this colour for our 2 rows, repeating, but now we'll be starting with 10, and our second row will be 9 clusters, but everything else will be the same. So I'm going to pause the video, because you've now seen how we complete these 2 rows, and all we've got to do is, when we change our colour, we change it to the next one in the line. So now I'm doing this colour, after that I'll be using this colour, and then I'll finish on the purple, and I will catch up with you when we're almost finished the 2 rows of purple. Okay, so that is slightly better in lengthwise with this DK weight yarn, but if you found when you were making yours it wasn't, I think just another couple, instead of doing a 3 there, maybe just another colour and having 2. But I quite like it with the 3, because as I said, with that just being the 1 colour, I found that it did look a little bit kind of small. So I think that kind of graduates into the next colours nicely. And of course once it's blocked it would be perfect square, but we've not finished actually yet. So I've finished off with my 2 in the last stitch, obviously not changing any colour, so I've completed those 2. And what we're going to do now is, just as we did our foundation row, we need one whole row, hiccup there, of double crochet, which is a UK term, single crochet in the US. So I've done 1 chain, and I'm going to go into that same stitch and do my double crochets. I'm going to do 1 in every stitch along all the way to the end, and that will complete our square, because obviously we started with that foundation row, so we need to end with exactly the same. And then we are done, apart from sewing in all of those ends, which if you're like me and you hate sewing in ends, is a bit of a chore, but there are people, believe me, who love it, who love sewing ends. I just wish I could find one who'd sew in mine, and that would be perfect. But just one double crochet UK terms, single crochet US terms, all the way along, right to the end, and then we are complete. So I won't pause the video, there's not much left. Pull out a little bit of yarn. Now, as I said to you before, you can use whichever colours you want, and if you want to use a different weight of yarn, just use the right corresponding crochet hook. And I find that this does actually look nice in amongst other granny squares, just to break it up, and especially in a blanket or something. So this one has two, so we're going to this one here and into our last one, which will be our turning chain, a little bit tighter than a stitch, and then we just end off. Cut a nice long tail and do a chain, cinch it right down, pull it down and out, and then we've ended off. And that is our purple patch granny square, which once you've done all the ends is but you can block it and make it a little more square. You can do 2 rows of this colour or 4 rows if you wanted it to be an even amount, but I think that might, I don't know, it might look okay. So yeah, just play with it really and get it how you want it, what colours you like, what yarn you want to use. But it's a great stash buster. Just got to sew the ends in now. So thanks for watching, and as I said before, if you haven't already, just please subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos, and right at the end of the video there'll be links to several of them, and including my giveaways. I'll put links to that. So thanks for watching, and bye bye for now.